Majora's Mask, Chapter 61, Song of Storms. The sun was just rising when Link rode out of the graveyard on Epona's back. The brown canyon walls of Ikana hid its brilliant rays still, even as the moon hung visible to all, a blight against the blue canvas. They'd taken advantage of the graveyard shack to sleep away the first night's exhaustion. 24 hours, and we haven't even reached the castle, the boy thought. Thankfully, there was still progress. They'd acquired 2 powerful masks, freed the entire yard of its undead, and found the royal treasure. True, it had been somewhat disappointing to discover the treasure was a song he'd already learned in Hyrule, but at least the mystery was solved. As they reached the sheer cliff again, Link saw broken stone columns still shattered in the dirt, dotting the walkway leading back to Clocktown. In the opposite direction, the old hooded woman with the flimsy fishing rod still kicked her feet over the cliffside's peak. She cackled as Link pulled Epona up to the wall far below her. Huh, the crone, Beldam, the devil. None of those identities had been confirmed, but he was fairly confident they were right. Have you found the mask filled with wandering spirits? She called down. Tattle stared up at her threateningly as Link wordlessly removed the brown hood. He threw it over his head, and his face fell to darkness, leaving room for only 2 bright yellow lights for eyes. The woman laughed wickedly again. That's a nice mask you're wearing. If their theory was true, this crone had been the leader of the spirits this hood was made for. The leader of the ninjas who once spied on the hilltop castle used that mask, she said. You may yet use it to call upon their spirits that even now wander. Perhaps you can save them too. She thrust her rod into the ground, causing a crack against stone that echoed. Epona backed away as the rock wall to their left fissured. The crack widened, splitting to make way for something on the other side. The witch kept laughing and pointing her finger as she faded away. Wait! Tattle cried, but the old woman didn't. Nothing remained of her by the time the solid rock had widened into a passageway. Link eyed the new gaping hole suspiciously. It appeared to lead straight through to the other side, which didn't make sense at first. The boy had assumed the cliff was the start of higher elevation, not a wall blocking something off. Clearly, I was wrong. The short cave led to a narrow cliffside. On the left, the pathway was bordered by a lethal fall into a gorge. To the right was a cliff wall. A slim dirt path hugged it and offered little protection or room for error. The canyon road snaked into the horizon under a fierce blue sky. Tattle and Link exchanged a glance. She didn't ask for the hood, he said. Maybe she's not Beldam, or the crone, or the devil.
We'll see, Tattle said. Something tells me we haven't seen the last of her.
But for now? Link asked. Tattle turned to the pathway, which was just wide enough for Link and his horse.
On we go.
The Skull Kid was afraid. An owl was perched solemnly beside him as they both watched from atop the high rock walls of Ikana Canyon. Far below himself in the rising sun, a thin passageway hugged the mountainous wall, overlooking the deep, sprawling gorges and plateaus of eastern Termina. A boy rode his horse along it slowly, accompanied by a white fairy. They traveled carefully, unaware of the imp watching them from far above.
I could strike them down now before they even know I'm coming, he thought. I could shoot a bolt of lightning at them. I could roast them in fire. I could command the earth to send them flying off the cliff.
But he was still afraid. He remembered shooting the boy with lightning in the sewers of Clocktown.
He absorbed it, shot it right back at me, and almost killed me.
He remembered trying to rip the magic out of him on the beach.
It burned me. His eyes turned purple again, and I had to let him go and fly away.
Both times had left him weak, and both times had driven him to the ashes across Snowhead. What if the Skull Kid struck at the boy now, only for him to turn purple-eyed and fly after him? Then the boy would slay him.
Your fear is misplaced.
The Skull Kid listened. His frayed hat blew gently in the wind. The purple mask still hid his face from the world.
As it always has. As it always will.
His one rival, the red-eyed shadow, had been slain when he tossed it off the cliff.
You have all the power in the world,
the demon said.
The magic of Majora knows no bounds.
He has magic too, though,
the imp said.
I've seen it. It's scary and fierce. I've seen it twice now. What if the darkness isn't enough?
For some reason, the image of a little girl flashed through his memory. Her hair was dark and wet, but her dress was stained red.
I don't know who that is.
Some memory that didn't belong to him.
You worry yourself needlessly.
Its voice was so dark, and yet so comforting.
The boy will be easy prey.
The Skull Kid didn't know if he believed the demon, though.
No, stop. Don't think like that. Majora can read your thoughts.
He knew that, but sometimes he forgot.
Have I misplaced my faith in you? I gave you a second chance. You will not disobey or fail me again.
No, never, Majora. I'll never fail you.
He remembered that day in the mountains when he'd flung the mask from his face.
No, shameful. That was a shameful day.
He'd been lost and confused before he'd wandered back so the mask could help him again. The girl flashed across his mind a second time.
Her white dress, it was red. Her head lolled to the side.
No, he had no idea who this girl was, and he didn't want to ever think of her again.
A shameful day. My most shameful day ever.
You do not have to strike now,
the demon told him, its imaginary voice chilling.
You can wait until the perfect moment. Wait until your courage is at its peak.
Wait. He must wait until his courage was at its peak.
No more shameful days.
The owl beside him hooted. The great horned bird had a broad chest, and its white feathers there were framed by dark gray and brown elsewhere. Its talons clutched the clay tightly, black against brown.
Its eyes, though.
They had once been a different color, but now they were dark purple.
Why do you need the owl?
The imp asked.
Wait,
Majora told him.
Wait, and you shall see.
The owl cocked its head to the side. The demonic eyes appeared lifeless as they took in the canyon landscape.
You made me catch it. You made me possess it. You made me name it Gabora.
Yes, a trophy.
The demon responded.
From another of my hunts. Your giants are not the only guardians to find their way into this realm in the hopes of protecting it.
The giants.
At the mention of them, the imp's skin prickled. They had once been his friends.
No.
He shook his head.
No. Shameful days. Shameful days.
The owl's role is an important one, as is yours. You will bring it with you to the battle.
My role?
The Skull Kid asked.
Your role is the most important of all. You must finally end the boy. You must kill the hero of time.
Those words gave the Skull Kid confidence to stand tall. He clenched his fists as he watched the boy disappear behind the next bend in the cliff.
I'm going to kill you, he thought. I'm going to wait for the perfect moment, and then I'm going to kill you.
Tattle eyed the sharp drop nervously.
One wrong step, she thought. That's all it would take.
Epona and Link would go rolling over the edge in a tumble of boy and horse. Then Tattle would be no better off than Tail, alone with no one but the Skull Kid to turn to.
Don't think like that. He's not gonna fall. Look how careful he's being.
The dirt path disappeared behind them, one step at a time. Link grasped Epona's reins carefully, guiding her each and every step at an excruciatingly slow pace. The sun had climbed the sky now, a monarch reigning over the mass ocean of carved land. Tattle tried to enjoy the view to their left, but she knew Link could not. His eyes remained on Epona's hooves and the ground.
I was hoping that witch lady had something better in mind,
Tattle said.
You know, a magic bridge or a ladder. She could have teleported us to the castle. A dangerous path on a really tall cliff is 0 out of 10 customer service. Maybe she was trying to kill us after all.
We'll be fine, Link said, his voice strained.
But what if it leads to a dead end? You probably don't have enough room to turn around.
Tattle looked up the length of the rock cliff and cast a partial shadow over them.
And there's boulders, too. If one were to fall...
One already had fallen, but far behind them. The debris had crumbled against the pathway and rained into the abyss of Akana. Thankfully, the path had remained intact in case they needed to turn back, but there was no way Link's horse could pull a 180 on this tiny ledge.
She'd trip over her forelegs.
I guess there are worse ways to die,
Link said. Tattle scoffed.
Then being flattened by a boulder? I guess if it killed you instantly, it wouldn't be so bad. But what if it crushes your legs and you just starve to death out here? Or what if you fall over the edge and impale yourself?
Link winced.
Thanks for those mental images.
You're the one who just said being crushed would be a peaceful way to go.
Link smiled.
Falling into a poisonous swamp and being burnt alive would have been way worse.
Tattle said.
What about being obliterated by a massive wall of fire when the moon falls?
Or being struck in the chest with lightning until the dark magic slowly kills me.
Or being drowned underwater by long arms of seaweed.
What about walking unknowingly into a wall of spikes because an illusion made it look like the way out?
Tattle wrinkled her brow.
What? I don't remember that happening.
I didn't mention that one to you?
Link said.
That was in the Skull Kid's cave. You were still kidnapped by the masked salesman.
The cave,
she thought. Any mention of it always brought her back to that day the Skull Kid forced her through it.
It was so dark. I screamed so much, but the boy screamed even louder.
She remembered his face, but quickly shook it from her mind. The fairy saw that Link hadn't noticed her reaction and quickly recovered.
Tail saved me from it, actually,
Link said.
He showed up just in time to talk me down.
Really?
Tattle said.
I'm kind of surprised. Tail's not usually the heroic type. I can't imagine him coming to save anyone at the last minute.
Then she remembered the inside of the masked salesman's bottle, banging on its glass and trying to warn Tail of his plan. Link echoed her thought.
He was working for the Dark Sorcerer at the time, right? So I guess he wasn't being a hero.
Right,
the fairy said.
I forgot about that.
She wondered what had happened to her brother on that cycle.
He might have lived.
After all, he'd done what the masked salesman asked, and neither he nor the Skull Kid had a reason to track him down.
That was the tale that Link grew to know. If only they'd stayed together.
She didn't know if her brother would have survived the ordeals Link went through to save her in that final hour, but surely Tail couldn't have lasted long if he flew over the moon falling. Another memory cut through Tattle's thoughts, of a dream at Romani's ranch. She'd just seen Tail among dead Gorons. He'd cut his own throat, bleeding into the ashes and dying.
Just a dream, though,
she thought. Hopefully not a prophetic one. Then there'd been the second part of the dream, Link with purple eyes again. Except that time his tunic had been gray and his hair had turned white. He'd raised his hand, and purple fire had enveloped her.
Hopefully that one wasn't prophetic either.
Though she'd had that nightmare more than once, ever since Link lost control in the Woods of Mystery.
That was so long ago.
But that had only been the first of many occasions. Tattle wondered when the next time his scar would take over.
Hopefully never.
When Link turned to face her next, she half expected his eyes to be purple. But they were blue, and he was turning to look at the bend in the road. "Looks a lot safer to me," Link said, smiling. He was right. The path wound around a sharp point and inclined upward. It was much wider, and they would soon be on the other side of the tall, steep wall they'd been walking along. Their beautiful view would soon be gone, though.
A small price to pay for a safer road.
They carried onward, Epona dutifully putting more and more dirt behind them.
More and more brown, more and more Ikana. You know, Link, something tells me that canyon view will be the only beautiful thing we see here.
"Really?" Link asked. "The castle won't be pretty?"
Well, I guess it could be. I don't really remember.
Tattle said it without realizing the implication. She frowned.
It's always under the surface of every conversation we have.
But it was something they had to ignore.
I'm a shadow, and you're not. But if there was an undead army poised to strike in the graveyard, I can't imagine what'll be in the castle.
"A feast? To welcome the hero and his fairy friend." Tattle's frown deepened.
I doubt that.
They found themselves doubling back from where they'd come on an inclined slope. The wall spared them from viewing the narrow ledge they'd been traversing, as they never quite reached its peak. Instead, they reached where their journey had begun, much quicker than the journeying below. They came out on the upper ledge where the cloaked old woman had been sitting. She was still gone, but it overlooked the spot where Link, Tattle, and Epona had stood, as well as the entrance to the graveyard. The higher elevation was similar to the land below. It sloped upward. It was brown, sky above, tall walls on either side.
Same old,
Tattle thought. The main difference, however, was that their trail was 20 times larger. The dirt and clay went from wall to wall and formed a very wide opening.
Where, oh, where is the not brown?
Tattle asked. "Not here," Link replied. Eventually, tufts of sickly green broke the clay. Despite the grass's brittle appearance, more of it continued to show, and soon their pathway leveled out. Tattle flew around a bend as the road curved left, following behind Link and Epona. It all seemed vaguely familiar to her. The road went on to the right, eventually disappearing around another rock wall. Beside it, a river sprung from a cave and followed alongside the road. It was a narrow waterway, but it seemed rather deep. The grass along its banks was much less dead than the weeds dotting Ikana's entryway. Across the river, there was another cliffside, though this one had a pathway built into it, zigzagging along the wall to the top. A pier jutted over the river at the cliff's base, with another one on their side separated by a sliver of water. Tattle looked to the top of the cliff across the river.
I think up there's where we need to go,
the fairy said, pointing. It towered over them, making it hard to see what lay on top. From this far down, she could only see a massive pale blue wall peeking over.
Ikana Castle.
She turned to see Link looking off to the right instead.
Link?
The pathway simply followed the river, but there was nothing in that direction but clay, rock, dust, and unreachable cliff sides. What? She stopped when she saw it too. A corpse. Tattle exchanged a dismayed glance with Link before he directed his horse there. Epona neighed, however, refusing to step any closer. The boy soothed her before exiting her saddle and approaching the body with his fairy. It was covered in fur and surrounded by a puddle of blood. Flies and maggots buzzed around the dead wolf creature, and the smell was putrid.
Do you think an animal killed it?
Tattle asked. And then left it here to rot? Link countered. The beast had been a wolfos. Its eyes were bloodshot, and a horrific mess all on their own.
Link, that's...
She stopped, unable to find the right word.
Disgusting.
But that wasn't strong enough. It reminded her of the mayor and his wife. The wolfos appeared to have exploded from the inside. It's whoever had the Redead mask, Link said. Tattle balked.
Here? In Ikana Canyon?
The boy looked up from the body to the road they'd just come down. Or heading to Clocktown to murder the mayor. Tattle's stomach lurched.
How could the murderer still have it?
Maybe we don't know who we're dealing with. That, or They're just extremely lucky. Tattle didn't know what to think. The fear in her began to subside, however.
It's not our problem. Yet.
Their mission in this cycle was to save the giant. Maybe, by the end of it, playing the Song of Time might finally take the Redead mask away, if its new owner was a shadow. If not...
Then it will be our problem.
For now, you say we need to go up there? Link asked, pointing to the cliff top.
Yes,
she said.
That's where the castle is.
Is there a way to cross the river further down the road?
That would be a no.
Well, me cow could cross, but Epona sure can't. He was cut off by a sound very familiar and annoying to Tattle. She spun just as a flaky white sphere made its way toward the hero. He drew his shield just in time, and the hollow projectile exploded harmlessly. Ugh, an octo. The last one they'd faced had been in Woodfall. The creature had the same green eyes, drooping purple skin, floppy snout, and a white-caped head. Its tentacles waved around as it popped out of the water in between the piers, firing yet another large pellet. Link blocked this one all the same.
Please kill that thing as quickly as possible,
Tattle said, as Epona neighed at the monster too. While Link had no projectiles in the swamp, here they could make short work of the creature. Or, Link said, smiling as he blocked another shot, we make a bridge.
Pardon?
Tattle watched as Link removed his bow and drew an arrow back against the string. The light blue gem on it glowed, and a small storm of ice was born at its tip. She watched as Link shot the creature. It froze instantly, creating a massive block of ice, Octo and River alike trapped within the shiny white cage. The makeshift bridge ran from pier to pier, as the arrow's cool winter magic still hung in the air.
How handy,
Tattle said, narrowing her eyes.
Do you think those gems keep going, or will they run out of juice eventually?
I don't think they last forever, Link reasoned as he put his weapon away and returned to Epona. Komas and Kotakas do because they're attached to their own life forces. These ones will run out of magic.
I see, elemental gem expert. Should we attach that to your title?
Link laughed. It's just an educated guess. For all I know, they'll last forever.
Well, you'd better hope that ice block lasts forever, or else we should probably hurry up.
Link had already thrown himself over Epona, leading her hooves from clay to wood. Then came the frozen monster. Tattle gulped, flying to the other side and watching as the horse took her first steps onto ice. Her legs slipped at first, but Epona quickly caught it, finding her balance as all four of her feet made it onto the block. The hard, cold ground clicked sharply beneath her. Its coldness radiated over them. That's a good girl, Epona, Link cooed, the horse shaking her head and buzzing her lips. It's not that far. It's just a little ice bridge. Epona looked down at the water running beneath her and the frozen Octo. She reared up on her hind legs, and Tattle gasped, waiting for her back legs to slip out from under her. But they never did. Epona charged to the other pier and made it, slipping only to recover on the wood. Link's steed came to a stop right in front of Tattle, so his face was an inch away from hers. She smiled at Link's shocked expression.
Did you pee your pants, Hero of Time?
No, he said, turning away. That was just really close.
Your close call counter is off the charts, Link. The next time you face mortal danger, please do me a favor and make it look easy, okay?
Link patted Epona again, and then he turned her toward the walkway along the new cliff. With a few more words of encouragement, they climbed to discover what lay over the high ledge. Midday was fast approaching, and clouds had begun to gather. Tattle heard the first grumble of thunder from far away.
It always storms on this day,
she thought. The different regions got rain at different times, but it appeared even Iconic Canyon was cursed by the second-day storm. As they neared their journey's end, only the dead limbs of a tree hanging over the edge revealed what may be on the other side. Then they reached the top. The area above was vast. Initially, it was a blank, flat landscape, stretching ahead of them and to either side for a few hundred feet. An empty riverbed ran all the way from the back wall a mile away to the cliff's edge they'd just ascended.
It must have been a waterfall once, leading into the river,
Tattle thought. To the right, and across the desolate landscape, a massive building made up the eastern border. It was the pale blue they'd seen from below. The tall, fortified wall towered over everything, starting at the cliff's edge and running until it stopped at Moore Canyon Wall. The door at its front was the largest slab of stone Tattle had ever seen, over 100 feet tall. The colorful markings on it were old and faded with wooden spokes guarding the top. It blocked everything behind it from view, and there were no windows or other doors, just the impenetrable front entryway. The fortress door bordered a collection of small buildings, which were in the dead center of the empty, dry land before Tattle and Link. The village formed a half-ring around the dried riverbed, and 4 of the 5 buildings were a variety of dilapidated shack. Some of the roofs had caved in, the doors were busted out, and many of the outside walls were no longer whole. All were as dry as the land, wooden and gray, reminding Tattle of Link's description of the masked salesman's Hyrule home. If anyone lived in them, they were not living in luxury. All were quite a distance from the great castle wall, but none were far from the dried stream. The 5th building, however, directly touched the empty riverbed. It was in much better condition and was brightly colored, contrasting starkly with the gray surrounding it. It was made of a dark blue stone, rounding out at the top to produce 2 rather large brass horns. The instruments glistened in the sunlight, which petered in and out behind the cloudy sky. The rounded roof was multicolored and vibrant. Triangles, circles, and swirls were painted into it with almost childlike taste. A water wheel hung on the building's side, suspended over the former river. It stood absolutely still, long dried out due to the lack of water. The 5 buildings were dots on the horizon and ants before the tall castle wall. Behind it all, the canyon steadily ascended even higher into more mountainous terrain. The empty riverbed disappeared into a cave on that back wall, but that was so far away to be only a dot. The ancient castle of Icona. Tuttle turned at the sound of Link's voice. He sat speechless atop his horse. The tall castle door sat like a guardian across the dust bowl. I wonder if that's our temple. Tattle wasn't sure, but she looked to see another building even further off than these ones. It was the tower they'd seen from Termina Field. The rise and fall of canyon walls separated them from it. It would be another long journey to get there. Maybe, Tattle said. She floated a few steps forward. I don't know if we can get into the castle from here, Link said.
I don't think we need to worry about that first,
Tattle said, gulping when she saw something else.
Do you see the building dead ahead? The one that has the horns and looks like a music box?
Yeah, why? The boy saw the pale shapes for himself. Thin, white, human-shaped creatures slowly walked around the colorful building in a circle. There was something threatening about their slow, mournful pace.
Do you think someone's trapped in there?
Tettle asked, her eyes lingering on the pale shapes. They were starkly white, almost shining in the limited sunlight. Who would live out here? Link said, as he made his way to the castle door. Aside from ghosts, stall children, crones, and other unsavory creatures?
I don't remember,
Tattle confessed. The fairy followed as they crossed the vast plain of rock and clay. The wind stirred dust around them. Its deafening silence felt almost violent. Epona slowed as she neared the Great Barrier, and Tattle and Link both craned their necks back to take in its glory. They were bathed completely in shadow before the ancient weathered stone.
I think it's like you said,
Tattle said.
Besides, I'm not sure you realize how far east we are, past those walls.
When she saw Link's gaze next, the fairy knew what he was thinking.
She is a shadow. The edge of Termina must bother her.
But she also saw recognition of the danger for himself, too.
We don't want you seeing visions of dead people. There's no reason to mix up ghosts that aren't really there with the ones that are. It'll get us confused and killed.
If we find a way in, we should go through, Link said regardless. I have the lens of truth. I can look through those sort of things, so we shouldn't have to worry.
Famous last words,
Tattle thought. She looked back at the blank stretch of land behind them and couldn't help but imagine a blood-drenched history in its rocks.
Let's try not to add to it. But for now, we should check out that house. Maybe there is someone there.
They walked onward, leaving Icona Castle behind. The dust came up around Epona's hooves again, the air as dry as ever, even as the sky threatened rain. I don't understand how this was ever filled with water, Link said, turning Tattle's direction to the empty riverbed. The land here is flat. It's always just going to dry up.
We don't know what's inside that cave,
Tattle said.
Maybe there's one of Great Bay's water pumps in there.
Do the dead need to drink water?
Probably not,
Tattle replied.
But fairies do. All of this arid land is really making me miss Great Bay.
I don't miss Great Bay, Link said. There are too many bad memories there.
There are too many bad memories everywhere in Termina. And I bet we'll be making some in Akanda Canyon soon, too.
Link slowed as they neared the colorful house. The pale figures were wrapped in white cloth. Their pace was abysmally slow. The ring of 6 or 7 wrapped bodies was evenly spaced to go all the way around, as if in coordination. Their faces were completely covered, leaving the people within unable to breathe or see.
They should all be dead,
Tattle said. They are all dead. Or undead. I think those are redeads. Tattle's eyes widened.
Why are they wrapped up?
The more lethal ones always are. Wrapped redeads are called gibdos.
Gibdos? So redeads have, social hierarchies and stuff?
I don't think it goes that far, but I always use a little more caution around these.
A little more caution?
Tattle asked.
They can control your blood.
Not exactly, Link corrected. The gibdos didn't seem to pay them much attention, even though they were only a few feet away. They simply continued their circle. That was just the masked salesman's mask. Real redeads only paralyze you, but after that, they eat you.
Eat you?
Tattle gasped. The boy nodded.
That seems just as bad as what happened to the fox-faced man.
Not quite, Link said, but eaten alive probably comes at number 2. They stood there for a while longer, but the gibdos never turned their heads. Link slipped off his saddle and patted Epona, who was staring at the creatures with wide, fearful eyes. I'm going to try to open the door.
But what if they paralyze you?
Tattle exclaimed. They're not even paying attention to me. Look. Link gestured to the gibdos, still ignoring them. Their paralyzing stare works through the cloth, but that doesn't change the fact that they seem more interested in circling this house for some reason. The boy nonetheless drew his golden sword. He passed between 2 gibdos quickly. The one he went in front of moved only a hair to follow him, but then thought better of it. Link walked up to a small wooden ramp to the door, attempting to turn the knob. Tattle remained floating by his horse, nervously eyeing the monsters and boy now in their center. It must have been locked because he knocked next. No one answered, however, and Link tried a few more times before breaking the ring of undead again. They were just as unresponsive, and Link rejoined them.
No one home?
Tattle asked. Nope.
I can't say I blame them.
Another voice surprised them. I wouldn't either if I were them. Tattle spun around to find its source. One of the nearby shack's front doors, which was only a piece of cloth, had been parted to reveal an inhabitant, the old woman. Her robe was just as purple, and her face was just as hidden. They've been holed up in there ever since that imp cast his curse. Tattle was dumbfounded, turning to see Link's mouth open as well.
You're here?
Tattle asked.
How? We saw you vanish.
One of my many tricks.
Who are you exactly?
Tattle asked, flying closer.
Why do you keep mysteriously showing up?
This is my home, she said, gesturing to the shack with her hand. It bordered the edge of the dust bowl near the canyon wall opposite Ikana Castle. I should be asking you two that question.
Not until we know your name,
Tattle persisted. Oh, you can call me Shade, the old woman explained. Because that's all I am, a shade. It's all you are, too. Tattle wasn't sure how to take that, raising her eyebrow.
Is Link a shade too, then?
The woman only cackled. No, he's not. He's the hero come to save us, it would seem. Link stepped forward uncertainly. Do you know what's going on here in Ikana, Shade? Do you know who the crone is? Beldum? Do you know where the sealed giant is here and where the Skull Kid's curse is? Shade shook her head, looking over her shoulder at her hut. So many questions, young hero, but I'm afraid I'm not the one to answer them. The old woman then raised a pale finger to point at the towering castle wall behind them. That is where you will find answers.
But how do we do that?
Tattle asked.
I've never opened a door in my life, and I'm not starting with one that could flatten all of Clocktown.
You must find the secret way known to those spirits who wander this battlefield. Shade said, raising an arm to encompass the empty plain. I asked you to bring the mask for a reason. Link still seemed skeptical. Why are you keeping your hood up? Tattle was shocked. That was unusually direct for him. The sun hurts me. I am but a weak, frail body, after all. I promise you, my face is nothing to see. She looked to the circling Gibdos next, still enraptured by their nearby procession. It's the cave that concerns you now, though, Shade added. You must follow the empty riverbed in and confront the troubled spirit within. That is the first task.
Why are you giving us tasks?
Tattle snapped. Because it's not a one-step process getting in that castle. She turned back to Link. You must go alone, and quickly. I'll watch your horse.
Alone?
Tattle said.
Why can't I go?
The spirit won't take well to company, Shade explained. It will only want to speak with the hero, and even then will not be complacent. I trust you'll know what to do. Tattle sighed.
Are you sure you want to do this, Link?
I'm sure, he answered. He took a step away from the three of them, looking at the faraway dark cave. I trust her. For now. I'll face the spirit and be right back. Tattle nodded, knowing exactly how their argument would turn out if she tried to refute him.
I'll make sure to take care of Epona. Be careful, Link.
Of course, he said. The boy smiled weakly before walking past the house surrounded by Gibdos. She watched him go, his boots kicking up dust on the dry land. Tattle turned back to the old woman who claimed to be Shade, flying to be an inch from her hooded face.
I don't know who you are, but if Link doesn't come back out of there alive, you'll wish you'd never been born.
Oh, I wasn't born, Shade replied, turning to face the fairy. I'm a Shade, remember? The old lady grabbed the rim of her hood and pushed it down. The cloth fell, and Tattle gasped. She was faceless. There was only wrinkled flesh and a single red dot where her eyes would be. Daylight became a speck behind Link, but the darkness he walked through was not infinite. His boots were heavy on the dry circular ground, and there were no traces of water on the dark stone. Yet he felt wetness in the air, growing cooler with each step. There was a faint glow ahead, promising some discovery. How long has it been since my last cave adventure? Link thought. The Skull Kid's cave. The treachery and traps hidden behind those illusions hopefully were not awaiting him again. I wonder what kind of troubled spirit this will be. He still wasn't sure if he trusted Shade, but she had provided them with the route here. They rarely ever had guides on their journeys. He wondered how this could possibly relate to finding a way into the castle, but if this was the land of the undead, then maybe spirit hunting was the best way forward. The glow was purple. Link stopped when his foot hit something lying on the ground. It cracked beneath his weight. A skull. The brittle, bony grin gaped at him with shattered eye sockets. His hand reached for his sword's handle, but he stopped. That doesn't usually work on spirits. An intangible enemy could not be felled by metal. So he kept going, unarmed. The cave ended at a large pit. Black columns surrounded its center, running from the dark ceiling to the illuminated floor. More skulls, bones, and rib cages surrounded a divot which the surrounding floor sloped into. The small, seatless amphitheater was filled with purple smoke that cast the glow. It swirled together, thick and wet enough to almost seem liquid. He stopped at the slope's edge, feeling the darkness in the room. The outside world was nothing but a speck far behind him, too far away to retreat to. Before he could consider his next move, the spirit spoke. What business have you in Ikana Kingdom, land where only the dead roam? Link steadied his fear, bringing his feet together to stand taller. He looked to where the voice had come from, the broken column at the center of the ceiling. I'm the hero of time. I came here to free a spirit. A Poe twirled into existence along the purple wisps of smoke. Link saw the similarity with his brother. He had a matching mustache, wand, and lantern, though his face was wider and shorter, and his robes were red instead of green. This is no place for one as full of life as you. Sharp, the second composer brother, said with narrowed eyes.
Or do you say that you wish to join the dead?
No, Link said.
That is fine.
Sharp cut in, his voice far icier than his brother's. He sold his soul to the devil, Link remembered.
If that is the case, then sleep gently to the melody of darkness that the great composer Sharp shall play, and join the ranks of the dead.
The pit's violet light broke free from its ethereal bounds, flooding over Sharp's lantern and baton.
I came to help you,
Link exclaimed.
Your brother! Ugh!
A sharp chest pain interrupted him. Link grabbed at his tunic and fell to his knees, for a moment fearing that his scar had taken over. But as he looked up and saw Sharp waving his baton, he knew the ear-grating melody rising from the darkness was at fault. The pain intensified, and Link screamed as the sharp pang twisted itself, as if a dagger plunged through his back and driven through to the other side.
Your death is here,
Sharp exclaimed over the horrible song.
I have summoned it from beyond. I see the mark upon all who enter Icona Canyon and hasten its cold embrace.
With every note, the imaginary dagger twisted itself further into him. His body wanted him to writhe in agony, but Link fought the spell, reaching for the ocarina on his belt. I have to heal him, Link thought. The next twist wrenched the instrument from his hands and the boy fell. He watched the clay flute bounce toward the hole filled with purple mist, but a skull stopped it from rolling all the way in. Link crawled toward it, ignoring the melody of darkness's razor-thin edge. He heard the soft crunch of crystal-piercing flesh, as if the song was stabbing him all over again. Crystal, he wondered. Why does it feel like I'm being stabbed by a crystal? He didn't understand, overwhelmed with discordant notes as he bled out. He didn't appear to be on a cave floor anymore, crawling shakily toward his ocarina that still defied the illusion. Link pulled himself through the pile of bones, separating him from his ocarina, finally wrapping his hand around the lost relic. Ignore the pain, he thought. Ignore the dagger. It felt like it was made of diamonds, glistening purple as it drank his blood. He pressed his lips over his mouthpiece, ignoring the pain throbbing throughout his body. Link's own melody then challenged the darkness, the Song of Storms.
What is this?
Shock distracted Sharp as he ended his curse. The pain and confusing vision stopped, including the blood. Thankfully, Link had never truly been injured. As he stood, he didn't stop playing. The boy backed away from the edge of the purple cavern's well.
This song, no, it can't be. This song.
The Poe grabbed his ears and spun, throwing a tantrum as he blocked out the tune. Then he vanished in a rush of colors and wind. Finally, Link lowered his ocarina, watching as the pit's purple glow vanished. Water replaced it, rushing forth from the magical curse once concealing it. It filled the pit of skulls completely, but it didn't stop there. Link stepped aside as it filled the dry riverbed running out of the cave, rolling with a current almost as strong as the river's. Link stood in awe as the cave's darkness fell away, replaced by the glow of the refilled stream. Sharp eventually spun back into existence, exactly where he'd been. Link instinctively went for his sword, but the composer brother stopped him. No, you have nothing to fear. The darkness of the Poe's voice was gone. His green eyes had softened. Link paused, still skeptical, but keeping his weapon stowed for now. Flat, my dear brother, Sharp said. Forgive your foolish brother who dreamt of the revival of the royal family. Our song made me remember. He sent me, Link said, finally relaxing. I got the song from him. Ye who do not fear the dead, with my brother's song you have broken the curse that was placed upon me. We dead should not be lingering in this land. It was all a trick of the masked one. Masked one? Link said. The imp? The skull child with the mask, Sharp answered. The devil. Finally, the boy thought. Someone we know, not a demon, a crone, a beldam, or a shade. I came to him wishing to return the king and his men to flesh, the Poe said.
back to the days when we were living, truly. But he took advantage of that wish, and instead used me to enslave everyone."
Link shook his head.
"The Skull Kid didn't make you all undead?" "No, but he made us his slaves and prevented us from leaving this world. The curse originated at the Stone Temple. I was the one who foolishly led him there, believing he truly meant to help us."
Link took the words in, but he was too shocked by the answer to form a question.
"If you truly do not fear the dead," Sharp said, "I wish you to go to the temple of this land and sever the root of the devil's curse. I, the only one who knows the way into the castle, shall direct you to the king who can help you."
The boy's eyes widened.
"The king is in the ruins of Ikana Castle, awaiting a hero. The well is the only way into the castle, but first, you must visit the colorful house for another boon to aid you."
Sharp swished his lantern to and fro, watching its light reflecting back in the newly rediscovered water.
"I have made my final request."
And then Sharp vanished again, leaving behind only the sound of running water.
So, it's just me and you again, huh?
Epona merely stared at Tattle with wide black eyes. She buzzed her lips.
Yeah, okay. Do you remember the last time he left us alone? You weren't any more talkative then either.
This time, Epona neighed.
That's an improvement. 3.5 golden carrots for you, Miss Epona.
The horse merely replied with a vacant gaze, turning away from the fairy in boredom. Tattle sighed.
Huh, I take that back. You have your master's sense of humor.
Epona and Tattle stood near the colorful house with the water wheel. Tattle had refused to follow the faceless freak into her hut.
Old women. At least Kotaka had a face.
The Gibdos were wandering around the strange home still, but the sound of rushing water soon changed everything. Tattle spun around as a river rushed out of the distant cave. Her face brightened.
He did it! Link must have freed the spirit!
The dry riverbed was soon filled with life, dotting the arid land around it with much-needed moisture. It rushed beneath the house's wheel, too, causing it to turn. Slowly, its wooden axle groaned as it finally spun. Tattle was shocked when something flickered to life, too.
Music?
She looked to see the roof's brass horn shaking with another new song. The strange, circus-like melody was eerie as it echoed across the desert canyon, and, oddly enough, the Gibdos did not seem to like it. The wheel turned faster, the song grew louder, and the Gibdos finally ended their dance. They moaned, seizing in place as they futilely covered their ears. They soon decided they couldn't take it anymore, flinging their arms in the air like wet noodles. Tattle's jaw dropped open, watching as the very sinister undead performed a very goofy dance.
What in the name of...
Then, the most unexpected thing of all happened. Their ridiculous, tantrum-like wiggling turned into burrowing. The ground gave way as their bodies descended into the dirt. One by one, the Gibdos retreated underground, all the while wriggling like worms. In that moment, the stiff, hardened corpses were as limber as wet fish, sloshing around in Ikana's clay as if it were water. The Gibdos retreated, in fear of the song. And then... all that remained was the turning wheel and the colorful house, and soon its door opened. A little girl peered outside carefully. Her bangs were long and brown, her cheeks freckly and pale, and her outfit clean and purple. The girl couldn't have been any older than 8. Her dark, innocent eyes scanned the landscape. She quickly spotted the fairy and horse. In response, she slammed the door shut.
Wait!
Tattle exclaimed, flying to her.
Din!
She thought.
A door! Of course it has to be a door! We won't hurt you! The Gibdos, I'm sure they left somewhere. I'm not sure where, but we won't hurt you! We're here to help!
Her pleading did nothing to bring her back, and when Tattle turned around, Link had rejoined them, walking alongside the stream.
"Where'd the Gibdos go?"
he asked. He appeared completely unharmed, as if his encounter in the cave had been nothing but successful.
You can call them error, 'cause they bugged out,
Tattle said. When the boy's face expressed doubt, she shook her head.
I'm dead serious. They turned into noodles and slipped through the ground like it was a colander.
"What?"
I think the song did it,
Tattle said, gesturing to the wheel and brass horns.
When the stream dried up, the wheel must have stopped working, which caused the Gibdos to show up and trap the girl in her house.
Girl, he said, stepping up to his horse.
Yes, she opened the door as soon as they left, but when she saw me, she ran away. I bet she locked it again.
No use breaking in it if we already saved her, Link said, though Tattle wasn't as quick to agree.
She has to be hiding something in there,
Tattle said.
What about you? How was your 5-minute adventure?
The other composer brother had some interesting things to say, Link said, but before he could finish, the nearby hut's cloth was thrust open. The old woman appeared, hood donned and a pot of steaming soup in her hands.
Who wants lunch?
Epona neighed happily in reply.